Tien's father worries about his daughter's happiness, the trials for Jack. In this world, there is no parent who does not wish for their child to have a happy life. But happiness is not just about promises made in the beginning, it is a long journey ahead, filled with joy, sorrow, challenges, and sacrifices. A father who has lost a child, who has endured immense pain, could he easily entrust his daughter to a man he barely knows? After a tearful reunion, the joy had barely settled before a new trial began. The father, with the eyes of a man who had weathered many storms, did not rush to make a decision. He did not only want to know who Jack was, he wanted to see with his own eyes if Jack had the patience, sincerity, and strength to protect his daughter for a lifetime. Would Jack be able to pass these trials? Was his love for Tien strong enough to prove that he was worthy? Let's follow today's story to find out. Jack returned on a late afternoon, just as the sun was sinking behind the mountains, leaving an orange-red glow that painted the sky. The last golden rays filtered through the treetops, casting long, blurred shadows on the familiar dirt path. The evening breeze carried the faint scent of dried grass and warm earth, blending into the quiet air of a day coming to an end. From afar, Jack caught sight of Tien, a vision he had longed for during the past days. She ran toward him, her steps light upon the ground, the hem of her dress fluttering in the wind. Her eyes sparkled, shimmering like water under the sun, reflecting a joy she could not hide. Though the distance between them had never been too far, the moment of seeing each other again after days apart was enough to make her heart race. Her hands unconsciously tightening around the edge of her dress, as if trying to steady the emotions surging within her. Jack quickened his pace, his arms ready to embrace her. But just as he was only a few steps away, he stopped abruptly. There was another gaze upon him, a quiet yet piercing gaze. On the porch, Tien's father stood tall, his arms crossed over his chest. The sunset cast long shadows over him, deepening the solemn lines on his aging face. He said nothing, his expression unreadable. But his eyes, those weary, knowing eyes, were studying the man before him with the careful scrutiny of someone who had seen too much of life's uncertainties. That was not the gaze of a stranger, nor was it the gaze of a man seeking to control his daughter's life. It was the gaze of a father who had once lost everything. A father who had endured the torment of loss, of loneliness, of sleepless nights, fearing that happiness would once again slip away from him. Tien gently grasped Jack's hand, as if offering him comfort, a silent reassurance. But Jack understood the true test was yet to come. Her father did not need many words. He did not ask Jack if he loved his daughter, nor did he demand vows of devotion. With a single look, he had made Jack understand love alone was not enough. A man may love deeply, but love has never been the only requirement for protecting and preserving happiness. Love may burn bright today, but will it endure tomorrow? Will it remain patient when hardships arise? Will it stay resilient when life is no longer painted in rosy hues? Jack gently squeezed Tien's hand, then took a deep breath, lifting his gaze to meet the eyes of her father. He knew that to gain this man's approval, he would have to prove himself not with words, but with his heart, his perseverance, and the trials that were yet to come. The sun had set, the sky now deepening into shades of indigo. But for Jack, the trials were only just beginning. The first trial, The next morning, before the sun had fully risen, Jack was awakened by the crowing of roosters and the faint scent of wood smoke drifting through the crisp morning air. As he stepped outside, Lytutien's father was already waiting for him. In front of Jack lay an old hoe and a long stretch of unturned soil. The old man said nothing. He simply placed the hoe on the ground and stepped back. Jack looked down at his hands accustomed to pens, numbers, and plans, now faced with the rough handle of a worn-out hoe. He took a deep breath, bent down, and began to work. Each stroke of the hoe felt heavy, testing his patience with every swing. The earth was dry and compact, jolting his arms each time the blade struck the ground, but he did not stop. As the sun climbed higher, sweat dripped from his forehead, merging with the dark soil beneath him. Not far away, the father stood watching. He did not hurry Jack, nor did he offer any words of sympathy. He simply observed. When the final row was dug, Jack set the hoe down and rubbed his reddened hands together. A light breeze carried the scent of sweat and damp earth. The father stepped forward, gazed at the work before him, and gave a slight nod. No praise, no words of approval, just a small nod. But it was enough for Jack to understand that the trials were far from over. The test of patience. That afternoon, as the sun dipped behind the trees, Jack was called back to the porch. Before him lay a collection of broken objects: an old chair with a missing leg, a hoe with a snapped handle, and a few worn-out tools scattered around. The father sat down in silence, his eyes distant, as if lost in memories of the past. He did not give instructions. He simply looked at Jack and waited. Jack understood this was not just about manual labor. This was a test. A test to see if he had the patience to mend what was broken, or if he would abandon it when things became difficult. He knelt down, carefully examining each object. Rusted nails, splintered wood, every detail required careful attention. Under the fading sunlight, Jack worked in silence, his fingers tracing each groove, each crack, determined to restore what he could. As night fell, the dim glow of an oil lamp flickered inside the small house. Finally, when the chair was repaired, Jack stood up, his hands covered in dust and wood shavings. He did not seek approval. He simply placed the chair back where it belonged. The father glanced over his work, then nodded once more. This time, however, there was a hint of softness in his gaze. The moment of truth. That night, the air grew colder. On the porch, two men sat in silence, the faint light of the lamp flickering between them, accompanied only by the distant hum of crickets. A gentle breeze carried the lingering scent of wood smoke. Slowly, the father stood up and took a few steps into the yard, his aged figure outlined against the moonlight. "Do you know how long I searched for her?" Jack lifted his head, listening intently. "I traveled across countless places, met countless people. These legs grew weary, but my heart never gave up hope. She is my only daughter. Do you understand?" The wind ruffled his silver hair as he turned back, his expression unreadable. "I don't need a wealthy son-in-law. I don't need a man who makes grand promises. I only need someone who will hold her hand until the very end, through happiness and hardship alike." Jack took a deep breath and slowly nodded. No vows were spoken, no poetic words exchanged. Just a long silence, yet in that moment, both men understood. The father said nothing more. He turned and walked into the house, leaving Jack standing there, watching as his figure disappeared behind the wooden door. What Jack did not see, however, was that as the door quietly shut, the old man allowed himself a small, fleeting smile. Being a parent has never been easy. We always wish for our children's happiness, yet we fear that such happiness is nothing more than a fragile illusion, like a fleeting dream that vanishes the moment we reach for it. We cannot walk beside them forever, yet we hesitate to let go. And then, when our daughter places her trust in another man, entrusting her future to unfamiliar hands, a father's heart suddenly feels more unsteady than ever. Thevillagechiefhelps' father had already lost his daughter once. He had endured endless days and traveled across countless roads, searching for the little girl he had lost to the cruelty of fate. That single loss had haunted him for a lifetime. How could he now entrust his daughter to another man, simply based on a promise? Some might say he was too strict, too unyielding. But who could truly understand the heart of a father who had experienced such profound loss? When one has suffered before, they no longer have the strength to endure another heartbreak. When one has lost before, they cannot so easily believe that they will not lose again. The trials he set for Jack were not meant to be obstacles, nor were they meant to prove anything to the world. They were the only way he knew to see into a man's soul. A man may be talented, successful, and well-spoken, but without patience, sincerity, and resilience, the qualities needed to protect his daughter's happiness, nothing else would matter. As he watched Jack strike the earth with a hoe, his hands once accustomed to pens and paper now roughened by labor, as he observed Jack patiently repairing broken objects with quiet determination. As he saw the unwavering resolve in the young man's eyes throughout each challenge, the father slowly came to a realization. Jack did not make grand promises. He did not use flowery words to persuade. He simply proved himself through actions, through the sweat that seeped into the soil, through the perseverance he displayed in the face of life's smallest trials, the same trials that a husband would inevitably face alongside his wife in the years to come. That night, as the two men sat under the moonlight, the father finally spoke the words he had kept hidden in his heart for so long. "Do you know how long it took me to find her, Jack? These feet have walked countless roads. My heart has endured countless sleepless nights. My entire life, I have only had one daughter. Do you understand that?" Jack did not answer right away. He sat in silence, staring into the darkness ahead, as if absorbing the weight of the old man's words, the pain, the hesitation, the fear of losing again. Then, slowly, he nodded. There were no vows. No distant commitments, only silence. But in that moment, both men understood. The father said nothing more. He stood up and walked back into the house, leaving Jack alone in the quiet of the night. What Jack did not see, however, was that as the door gently closed, the old man allowed himself a small, fleeting smile. Not because he had fully placed his trust in Jack just yet, but because, for the first time in a long time, he realized that he could learn to trust again. And perhaps, for a father, the hardest thing in life is not raising a daughter, it is learning to trust in the happiness she has chosen. What do you think of this story? If you were a father, would you have tested Jack the same way? Have you ever experienced the moment of letting go and allowing your child to choose their own path? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to hit subscribe to follow Jack and Thevillagechiefhelps' journey to hear more heartfelt stories about love, family, and the timeless values that endure through the years.